Tara, how are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I am amazing and so excited that you are here on Confidence Conversations.
I'm actually really excited to be here. I love this. I love the topic of confidence. I love this podcast. I love everything it represents. Consider me a super fan.
Thank you. And you've got to have a bit of confidence to walk around and be the quote unquote most hated of one of the most amazing franchises, the Real Housewives of Toronto. So, whether it's protagonist or most hated, where do you feel like you land on that spectrum?
That's such a good question because is there really a difference? There's a lot of words that I use to describe villain, protagonist, anti-hero, all of
Mhm.
the above. Where do I land on that spectrum? In the course of the show, 100%, all of these reality shows need a villain. Again, anti-hero, whatever you want to call pot stirrer, truth speaker. And I definitely landed in that role. 100% will say, yes, that was mine. I was there. And once I figured it out during the course of filming, which I did figure it out during the course of filming, that that's who they needed me to be, I embraced it. And having had a background in storytelling, and I initially got into Housewives because I wanted to produce. So I understood what they needed from us. I said, okay, they need a villain. So, if they would ask me questions, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the narrative of the show, but there was one point where everybody went on a water banana ride. And that was scheduled by production weeks in advance of when it happened. But in my interview, my confessional, I was asked, why did you choose to have everybody on the water banana? Well, reality television is a lot like improv. You can't break that fourth wall and say, what are you talking about? Because production had it scheduled. So I understood what they wanted from me. And I thought for, 2 seconds in my head. And I said, well, because they got so drunk at my party, I knew the best cure for a hangover is to take everyone on a rocky ride. Oh my goodness. When that aired, if social media didn't say, you're the worst, how could you do that? So in a lot of ways, I created my own problems, but at the same time, somebody needed to do it. So I sort of embraced it and went, okay, I'll step up.
I love that because on one hand, you're being authentic and true to who you are, but you also understand like the space and the gap in the market, which is a key to being a successful, badass woman.
Exactly. Wow, that's really well put, actually. But that's exactly what I think successful participants in reality television do is they do present their authentic selves. Because if you're not authentic, let me tell you something, and I'm sure you can think of shows, reality shows you've watched where you've seen inauthentic characters. If you're not, I think it's unauthentic actually, English literature major, I should know better. If you're not authentic, the viewer will detect it a mile away. So you really do need that secret balance of being authentic, but also you have to people tune in to entertain. I mean, this is not a yearbook. It's funny. I used to work for Allure magazine as a journalist, and when Linda Wells, who was the editor there, who was like very revolutionary, she came from a newspaper background. And before Linda, the way uh, fashion and beauty was reported on was not anything like the way it is now. And even the way the products were photographed, you know how now they do the smear of lipstick and the sprinkle of eyeshadow? That's Linda Wells. She brought that to magazines. She brought that to journalism. But anyway, when she would get letters from people saying, oh, your models are unrealistic, they're this, they're that, they're the other thing, she had a great line that she trained all of us in. She said, this is not a yearbook. We're not here to, it's not, you're not here looking at a yearbook or a family album. We need to distinguish from that. And I can remember during Housewives, I was thinking, okay, well, this is not home movies. Like nobody's tuning in, to see everybody singing Kumbaya and holding hands. The viewer wants entertainment. The viewer also, I am convinced, reality television, why I tune in and why others tune in, you need a little bit of that judgment itch to get scratched. You want to see people misbehaving and say, no, wrong, shame on you. And recently I heard a quote from someone. I'm sorry, I'm going on so much. I had way too much coffee this morning. But recently I heard a quote from someone that said, judgment is like a personal confession. And I remember I read this, I thought, wow, what does that mean? But then it really sort of grew in me. And I thought, a lot of the things personally I might judge someone for, if I'm honest with myself, maybe that's behavior I wish I could do. So I was watching Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip the other day, the one where they go to Thailand.
So
And it's
good.
interesting because Whitney, it is really good actually. They did a fantastic job on that one, really good job. And Whitney smokes a joint and is in her bikini and gets drunk and is pole dancing and all this stuff. And one of the other housewives says, you have kids and how could you do that? It was really a great conversation because on one hand, I was listening to the other housewife that said that and I thought, oh, that's very judgmental. But at the same time, I was thinking, yeah, but if I was in Thailand, I wouldn't be behaving like that, thinking, well, what if my kids or their friends see this? But then on the flip side, I was thinking, but Whitney's so much fun and I like to be fun like that and I like to have fun like that. So it's a very interesting, a judgment is a sense of a self-confession. It's a really interesting way to look at life, actually, in the bigger
No,
scope.
you're so right. And I think that not only is it a self-confession, it also like is a self-projection almost of either this is what I wish I could do, or this is an insecurity I have. Because no one who's like 100% confident or happy in their own skin is going to be sitting there judging you, telling you what you should or shouldn't do.
Exactly. And it's funny because I noticed that the other wives who were confident were like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe that's
So
not their
interesting.
thing, but they're not casting judgment. So I want to
Hmm.
get into the book Most Hated, which just came out a couple of weeks ago on May 30th. Tell me about the book and the idea. And is it a little bit of art imitates life?
Well, it is. What's that old expression? Write what you know. And I know this. So it's funny you say that because some people have said to me, so is it a autobiography? And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. It's not a calculated tell-all. It's not an autobiography. It's not a biography. There are no characters. It is a fiction story. And there are no characters I cast on my reality show within the pages, which is called Talk of the Town. And we can all draw parallels to what show that might be mimicking. But there are no characters that represent anybody past or present, hopefully not future, on any of the franchise of Housewives or any other reality show. So I went into my head and said, okay, Kara, you're casting this reality show of affluent women interacting with one another, sharing their daily lives with the audience. Who do you want to cast? So I went about it that way. And that's how I started. That's how I thought, well, I had a lot of friends who were married to sports stars, actually. They were wives of sports stars. Some of them themselves were former athletes and they had retired because of injuries or because they had had kids or their career had come to a natural end, or maybe they were never athletes. But it was fascinating to talk to these women and hear what they sacrificed for their family, for their husbands' careers, and not, they're not sour grapes, but they're definitely part of that team. So I thought, oh, I really love that dynamic of someone that, they have to. I can remember one of them said, do you realize when we go to functions, people will hand me their phone camera and hand me a coat and say, take a picture. And I was like, wow, I never thought of that. But there's a lot of that goes on. And again, not in a resentful way they were conveying this, but they said it's so important as the wife of an athlete that you find what your game is, what your thing is. So I thought, oh, I love this dynamic. I need one of my characters to be that. Then I was also really fascinated with the idea, individuals who have been, who have committed sexual offenses in the Me Too genre, sort of that sort of behavior. I'm thinking of like the Harvey Weinsteins, the Matt Lauers. What fascinated me about that was their wives. We always hear from the victims, as we should first. But I was always still curious, but what about the wives? And the more I researched this with girlfriends and acquaintances, it was fascinating that they would say, well, of course they knew about it. And if they didn't know about it, well, then that's on them. And I thought, wow, this is what we think about this. So I definitely wanted one character to have an ex-husband. This is Sabrina, and her husband is a British, he's not a royal, but he's a British aristocrat, a titled aristocrat. And he is charged with sexual misconduct. And she divorces him and then sort of says, now what? Who am I? And how do I repair what the world has, judged me to be? How do I go about this? So she decides, going on this reality show, maybe her cousin convinces her, maybe this is a chance for her to rewrite her narrative. We have a fading pop star. We have the CEO of a sex toy company, because I wanted a female CEO that was sort of quirky and brash. And we have a social media influencer. And they all come together. They're all cast on this old, worn out version. They're trying to revamp a reality show that's been around for a long time. And then it all happens.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. You guys have to check it out. And I want to talk about that first character that you mentioned, because I think a lot of women can relate to, doing their thing, being in their own lane. And this isn't everyone's story, right? But then you get the family, you have the kids, you move, and now you're supporting others. Even if you are still working, there's a piece of that dream, right, that has to be sacrificed to manage all the things.
Absolutely. Yes. This is that. So that's the character. Her name is Dahlia within the pages of the book. And it's interesting. I mean, let me tell you something about mom guilt. Even now when I'm doing work and things like that, when I look at the clock and I see it's 6:15,
Yeah.
mom guilt goes off. Oh, I need to be making the dinner. And it's great. I have the most supportive husband. I have 3 boys.
Mhm.
Their wives are going to be so lucky because I have trained these boys so well. They will say, no, your work is important too. And we are all here. So tonight it's my turn. Or my husband will say, I'm doing the prep tonight. You're working here, you're busy. And by the same token, when my husband's in court or something like that, I'll jump in and do that, which is great. But it's funny how as women, we are wired that way, right? We're wired that no, and it's nice to see that it's changing. It took a while for it to change for me, but yeah, in the especially with these women who are the wives of the superstar athletes, it's incredible how one of them, who is incredibly sage and wise, she said to me, not just in my area, Kara, but in any woman's area, it's so important that you find your purpose. Your passion will change over your life, but you have to know what your purpose is. And that's going to be a present participle verb with an ing at the end. So my purpose is to, I am going to keep doing this. So for example, when I found my purpose, I'm an encourager. Who knew? But I will keep encouraging, and I love encouraging people. And when I'm in my sweet spot of encouraging people, oh, it feels good, and I feel good, and so it's just kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
And that's what lights us on fire, is that purpose. It's, what you would do even if you weren't paid for it, but it's that ikigai, the fourth elements coming together. And what brought you to finding your purpose? Was there a moment where a light bulb went off and you were like, yes, this is it. I'm an encourager and this is how I'm going to show up as an encourager?
The funny thing is, I think it's what brought me to recognizing my purpose, because I always was living my purpose, but I didn't realize it. Because I've had people before, even when they were angry with me, going, we don't need you being a cheerleader. And now when I look back on that, I'm sort of saying, oh, wait a second. I was encouraging back then. I was like, when they were like saying in a derogatory way, wow, I was encouraging. I can't believe that. But actually, truth be told, during COVID, I did a course online through Coursera, Yale University, Dr. Laurie Santos. I don't know if you've heard of the happiness course. A lot of people have done it. If you do it through Coursera and pay the $65, you get a little certificate that says you have this degree from Yale, this little course you've completed. And one of the elements of finding happiness is knowing your purpose. So this was actually part of that course. And the funny thing is, I think it was actually an executive at Disney that pioneered a really fast track way to find your purpose. And you go through like would you rather this or this? Would you rather this or this? And the whole time you're picking one or the other, you're eliminating things that aren't your purpose. And then at the end, it says, well, one of these 3 is your purpose. Which resonates the most with you? And when I saw encourager, I went, yeah, you're right. I love that. Whether it's through writing a book where I'm encouraging women to sort of change the narrative in the terms of how we relate with each other, or whether it's my kids when they're having an exam, or my mom when she's like frustrated about something, it's really cool. And the one thing that I did learn is your passion will change throughout your life, but your purpose remains the same. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
It is. And I think as an encourager, it's nice that you have that innate ability, but that's not everyone's purpose, right? And
No, oh no.
how do you, or what advice would you give for those who are struggling with either finding their purpose, or I know that this is my purpose, but I don't feel encouraged, I don't feel confident enough to actually pursue this because it's big and scary?
Okay, so that's a great question. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm not going to quote it properly and directly, but it deals with it's worse to regret not trying than the
Mhm.
feeling of failing. And that is so true for me. I am the one, I'm always telling my kids, you want to find a parking spot, you got to go around the block. You got to get out on the skinny branches of life. Every cliche I could ever say. When people say to me, why would you do housewives? Why would you ever do that? I sort of think, well, why not? That's my purpose. Why not try new stuff? Why be stagnant? When I was an actress in LA, I remember a really smart acting coach said to me, I was saying, oh, I don't know, I'm not doing a lot of acting. And he said, well, what community theater are you doing? And I was like, none. And he said, Kara, you're not going to get jobs doing Shakespeare to a flower in a field. Like, get out there and do it. Start doing it, even if you're not getting paid for it. Wherever it is, do it. And that, I think, can translate across anything. So what would I say to someone who said, I don't, finding your purpose? Well, there's a lot of resources online that you can go to find your purpose, but it's interesting recognizing your purpose. They say when you're in that sweet spot of living your purpose, when you've been working on something and time goes by and you're not even aware of what time it is, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been working at this for 6 hours and never even realized, and you don't feel hungry or fatigued or anything like that. That's how you're in that sweet spot. You're doing it. And again, people might go, well, what are you doing? Encouraging all day long? No, it depends, like, through what outlet or conduit I am living my purpose. So as I say, like, if I'm writing and I'm really into a character, and what I've learned about women's relationships with other women is really informing this, and I'm in there and I'm like, this is great, and someone's going to read this and this is going to make a difference, I'm living my purpose. And there you go.
And you're really authentic about it, which is something that I love. Like, in everything that you do, any interview that you have, you come across as very authentic. You're yourself no matter what.
Thank
And
you.
no, it's good. But I think sometimes when we're ourselves, and I've gone through this, it's this line of, like, that we ride of, I'm super authentic and I'm also misunderstood. So what do you do in those situations? And do you even care?
Okay, I would love to sit here and say, I don't care at all, like me or not. This is who I am. I care. I think we all care. I care less than I did before. So there's been growth, and I can look at that and say, great. Going into doing the Real Housewives of Toronto, I was probably the worst person that could have done a reality show, because I went in as a serial pleaser. So I just wanted everybody to be happy, and this is great. And what I learned through the course of that is there is a ton of vanity tied up in being a pleaser. I would think, oh no, I just want everyone to be, to be enjoying their life and enjoying their time around me, and I want to make other people happy. Well, when you're a pleaser, you want people to like you. So you're willing to change who you are for other people to like you, which was a tough lesson, a lesson that took a lot of time for me to learn, and one that I still continue to work at. So in answer to your question, yeah, I still care a lot. I care less. Wait, I forget, where was I on this tangent?
Oh, you're talking about how, like, being a pleaser, there's vanity tied up into it, and you care less now. But
But you do still care. I mean, I think it's part of the human condition, right? That we live in community and we care what other people think. It's interesting, within the pages of my book, prior to actually sitting down and writing the book, after Housewives, I read this great book. I always knew I wanted to write a book about female relationships. I come from a family of mostly girls, mostly girl cousins. I went to an all-girls school. I've been surrounded by women my entire life. And I didn't know, I knew I was going to write a book about female relationships, but I didn't know what the background would be. And then after I did Housewives, I said, oh, actually during Housewives, I went, well, this is good. This is what the background will be. So I read this book by Dr. Phyllis Chesler. It's a nonfiction book, a research book. I want to say she took either 7 or 17 years, but she took a long time researching it. And it's called Woman's Inhumanity to Woman, singular. And in it, she researched how, from the age of 8, how girls interact with other girls, starting in the playground, how we are very tribal in our relationships, how the independent thinkers and the truth tellers get shunned from a very young age by those at the top of the tier. If you don't fall into step, if you don't match what they're saying, you're shunned or slandered or gossiped about, because the little boys, they're not the ones punishing the truth tellers. The little boys don't care. And when little boys have a problem with each other, what do? They tussle, they, put someone in a headlock or whatever like that. They go, and I'm not saying by any means that girls should, increase their physicality with one another. But little girls are told, you put your hands on your lap and you don't act like that. If you have a problem with someone, you put it in your pocket and you take it home. So the anger is left to fester. And what happens with it? As I said, it turns into this really ugly thing. And this starts at age 8 on the playground and just gets worse as we get older, as we grow up. And I've had acquaintances say, oh, I've experienced this in the workplace. Oh, I've experienced this with mommy groups. Oh, I've experienced this, with the PTA. It's incredible how we really have to start shaking up how we train girls to interact with each other at age 8 in the playground, how we deal them. If you have a problem with someone, you need to take it and address it immediately in a respectful way. You don't have to like or love everyone, but you do have to respect them. And in a respectful way, you have to agree that maybe we don't all have the same point of view, but that's okay, because your point of view has validity for you and my point of view has validity for me. And we can all do this. And we really need, I hesitate to say we need to teach young children this, because when I say that, sometimes on social media, people say, no, we don't need to teach them. The parents need to. Well, that's what I mean. Collectively, as a community, which we do live in community, we need to make this happen with children. And what Dr. Phyllis Chesler says is, it's a tricky subject to talk about. And when she was writing the book, a lot of people were telling her, don't write this. This is friendly fire. The sisterhood has to stick together. We can't say there's cracks in our own walls, because we have to be out there.
People love it right there, of them telling her not to do it. That's an example.
Right? Exactly. Completely. And she says, look, I'm a second generation feminist, but there's problems here, ladies. There's problems, and we got to fix the problems. And if we fix the problems, we will be stronger together, and we can, go out there and deal with the other issues that we have to.
So true. We're stronger together, and we're stronger as individuals too, because at the end of the night, you lay down and your head is on your pillow, maybe by yourself or with your husband, but you are there, not all of those other women. And I think it's so important that we find our voices and that we teach children that they do have voices and opinions at an early age, because that's when so much of the subconscious programming is going on. And that's the work that we have to undo when we're older. And it's very difficult to understand, why don't I fit in, or why do I not get along with the cliques? And I've experienced that. And I know so many others have as well. And it's just, it could be something as small as you were raised differently and you don't have the same opinions, but that follows you around. And then you start to develop a complex. I get along better with men than women, or whatever it is that you're telling yourself. And that's really not the case. It's just that seed was planted at a very young age, and now it's blossomed into a plant that you don't want to have.
Exactly. Spot on. That's exactly what it is. And it's interesting because Dr. Chesler delves into how, people might say, oh, well, okay, so it's, slander, shunning and whatever. But she said, no, this is actually life and death, because in some cultures, the gossiping, it leads to death in terms of things like honor killings. I mean, and these are, when the honor killings are happening, it's women. It's women against women. Guys, come on. And somebody said to me once, so you've written this book and now you've done Housewives. So what if you had a campaign, if you could make a t-shirt, what would it be? And I thought about that. And I know she wanted me to say, no more Housewives or something like that. And I said, no, I love reality television. Actually, I still work in it and I think it's art and I love it. But I think my campaign would be, within our culture, we've been very successful, more so late, at taking certain words out of our vocabulary. And marking certain behaviors, marking certain words as toxic, as not acceptable. If we could do that with the act of gossip, wow. Can you imagine starting with the young girls, when you're age 8 and someone gossips to you about someone else, not cool, walk away. I won't be part of that. If we could do that, I think that would take us miles down the road.
Yeah. And it helps to increase your own personal confidence. Because again, those labels that are put on you, especially when you're young, especially that 8-year-old girl, whether it's true or not, that sticks with you. It sticks with you. It becomes a part of you. And you don't know to oh, this is a name tag. It doesn't belong to me. Let's throw that away. You keep it, you hold on to it. It's on you. And then as life goes on, other labels get tacked on, and you're sitting here with all of these things that don't necessarily belong to you, that don't necessarily describe you. And you're trying to reconcile the labels with who you are.
Exactly. Max Lucado has a children's book about that. And the name is escaping me right now, and I'm really mad, but he has a great children's book about a land of puppets, and the puppets put stickers on each other for any, shortcoming. You get a sticker for this because you're not smart enough, and you get a sticker. And one day one of the puppets meets a girl and she has no stickers. And he's like, wait, how do you have no stickers? And she's like, Well, people try and put them on me, but they don't stick.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a great book. And I can't believe Max Lucado is the author. And I'm so mad at myself for forgetting the name.
That's amazing. I'm like, I don't have kids yet, but like that is the book. That is like the first the first trip to the store. And it reminds me too of, and I forget who says this, but they were basically saying if someone was like talking about you, cursing you out, or saying whatever in a language that you didn't understand, it wouldn't mean anything. Or if it were like a person, like a random person that you're walking by on the street, you'd be like, okay, that person is out of their minds. But when it's someone you know, for some reason, we don't take that same mindset with us of like, all right, that's on you. Like, even if it is someone who is in their right mind or whatever that means for you, you don't have to allow that to stick on to you. And you can also take it back to what we were saying at the beginning of the conversation, which is that is a projection. That is your own, self-expression, your own self-guilt of what maybe you're thinking about yourself. It doesn't belong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I explore this in the narrative. And again, my book is fun and light and funny. It's not this like heavy, oh my gosh, what am I reading here? It's a fun, light book, but there are layers. And I do explore that as women, we're more vulnerable to that, to what you were saying about, if it's someone you don't know, because as women, we're inherently relational. We want to feel deeply. Men are okay with having these middle ground friendships, but as women, we want a best friend, and we share everything with the best friend, and we invest in that. And then again, this is Phyllis Chesler goes into this, and then when that friendship, if something happens to it, that individual knows where all the bodies are buried, and it can be so hurtful. And I'm not saying, again, I have to be so careful here, I'm not saying women should change and should no longer be relational. That's who we inherently are. But we can accept that that's who we are, and be tender with each other's feelings, and accept that, this is a great responsibility I've given entering into this friendship, and recognize it for that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, because a relationship really is a responsibility, a responsibility that we're lucky to have. And so before I let you go, I want to know, what does confidence mean to you?
Oh, what does confidence, that's such a, I mean, I could sit here and talk for an hour on what confidence means to me. But I think confidence means being your authentic self. If I had to summarize it up, and I know that's, a lot of people like to use that word authenticity these days, and I know that's there, but again, when you're your authentic self, it's like what we were talking about, living in your purpose. You are in the sweet spot. You feel it. You know who you are. You're not worried about people accepting you for what you're delivering, because you're putting it out there and saying, this is who I am. And, someone once said about me, they said, it was so funny, they compared me to a condiment. I was asking someone the other day, if you were a condiment, what condiment would you be? And they said, why would you ask me that? I said, because somebody said, Cara Alloway is a lot like pesto. Some
Mm,
people like pesto, some people don't like pesto, but everybody has an opinion on it. And so I was thinking, wow, okay, so I have to be okay with that everybody's going to have an opinion. And I don't need to worry about the people that don't like me, because there's a lot of people that will like me. So that's got to be good enough for me, living in my authenticity.
living in your authenticity. I love
Funny.
that. Any final words of wisdom?
Never stop. Can I tell you, I just never stop, never give up. I just had lunch with an editor I worked for many years ago. This woman is turning 80 this year. I invited her to a party,
Yeah.
and she said, I'm so sorry, I have to give my regrets. And I was like, okay. And I said, you're going away to your summer house this summer? And she said, no, actually, I'm going to be rescuing orphans in Iran, because they're being kidnapped into early like to be married early by the Taliban. And I went, I'm done, and I'm not done. And she's flying over to do that. And I can't tell you how that was the injection I needed. I just said, you know what? Never stop. This woman is 80, and here she is living her purpose and out there and doing it, rescuing orphans in Iran. Like, wow. So never stop, never give up.
I love that so much. Never stop, but do make sure you stop by the bookstore to pick up Most Hated by Cara. It's amazing, and you won't regret it. And Cara, thank you again for being on Confidence Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.